Usually, when we hear a melody has direction and purpose. Each note in a key has a role in the grand scheme of a song. In this tutorial about how to write a melody, we will be investigating the relationship between these notes. Let's examine the C major scale. You may notice as we go up the scale, it gives the effect on our ears as though we are climbing up a steep surface with increasing force until it is almost unbearable. Then finally, at the end of our scale, we conquer the force and come to a rest. It's almost as if the note before we complete our scale has a magnetic force attracted to the final note. That is, there exists some gravitational attraction between the two notes. In our case, in the C major scale, it is the note B to C. Upon further investigation into the notes of our major scale, we can find there are more relationships similar to what we have just witnessed at the end of our scale. It is important for us to understand these relationships in order to write meaningful melodies with direction. Examine the diagram to view these relationships. These attractions are just as relevant in chords as they are melody. It isn't important to commit this diagram to memory. However, a conscience of this relationship will aid you in writing good melody. In a later video, we will investigate the relationships with chords. The arrows show the neutral flow in the scale. If we go with the arrows, we are going with the natural flow. However, if we go against the arrows, we are going against the flow. This will help us create and relieve tension when constructing a melody. Some areas are neutral in both directions. Let's examine how this sounds. I will play a clean tone through our speakers so we can investigate these relationships without interference. Notice how when I went from C to E, in between this transition, there was a tension created. This is because D wants to move up to E, or back down to C. Now let's continue further with the flow of the scale. This time, just before we got to G, there was tension created, just like we've seen between C and E. This is because F wants to go up to G. However, if we went down from F, our ears do not feel at rest, as they do when we go up to G. So let's listen what happens when F goes down instead of up. Notice how it doesn't sound as complete as when we went up. How about A going down to G? A resolves perfectly down to G. However, as we can see from the diagram, A can move in both directions. Let's start from A and continue up our scale. Notice how this time the effect was much better and satisfying to our ears. By moving up the scale, we created more momentum than going down, until finally coming at rest. Notice how all of our points of rest are in intervals of 3. Remember from our previous video? This is called a triad. Let's hear all 3 of the resolution points once more. Remember, they are at E, G, and C. Notice how when we arrive at these 3 points, the tone cleans up and creates clarity, and with this our ears relax. Therefore, it is no coincidence why we use our chords in intervals of 3. Recognize that? That is our C major chord.